Hello, I'm Garima Sharma, Chief Technology Officer and Senior Director for Data Engineering and Applied AI at Microsoft. Now, in this talk, I'll cover a topic that is taking the industry by the storm and the one that I'm personally passionate about, which is democratization of data through the no code, low code movement. We're going to cover how the low code, no code movement creates a decisive competitive strategy for any organization. We'll also cover how data can be leveraged to create new opportunities, revenue streams, and to drive business growth. The answer lies in managing the human side of the equation, the human capital, which has become more important than ever before. Now, once I've gone through the material, happy to take any questions in the end. We're living in the big data world. Rapid advancements in technology mean that the businesses of today are collecting more data than ever before, and data continues to grow at an exponential rate. If we take a look at the figures to get a handle on exactly what is the amount of data that is out there, it's too big of a number, almost too big to wrap our head around. As this data continues to grow, today we are at over 100 zettabytes of data. And this is an artifact of more than 500 new websites coming up each day and more than 35 billion IoT devices that are generating data every day. In about 4 years, which is about 2025, the world's data will grow to 175 zettabytes. And what does that even mean? So putting it in perspective, if we were to store 175 zettabytes on DVDs, your stack of DVDs would be long enough to circle Earth more than 220 times. That's right, more than 220 times. And so another way to look at it is, if you were attempting to download the same volume of data, 175 zettabytes, at the average current internet speed, you would take 1.8 billion years to download. So we're talking about really very large, massive volumes of data. Now, you'd be hard-pressed to come across a single data forum where you don't hear something to the effect of data is the new oil, or something like data is the new currency. And all of these claims are true to a certain regard. Let's add one more to the list, which is, data is a very valuable commodity, right? Like all of these, yes, these do speak to the merits of the big data world that we are living in. Now, this idea of democratization of data, which is about making data available to everyone in a company so individuals can feel empowered to draw intelligence and drive action. This data democratization comes with its own set of challenges that cannot be overlooked. Not everyone in a company is a professional engineer who is informed enough to understand the data or even have the expertise to do something with it. I lead a team of full stack application developers, data scientists, and data engineers, and I fully appreciate the many, many years of experience that is needed to be proficient in this discipline. Companies are facing a lack of data professionals, and within the next decade, there will be a shortage of more than 1 million developers in US alone. Now, while I appreciate how data democratization enables creativity and innovation, this disruptive innovation should create chaos. There's a need to proactively understand, accept, and mitigate the risks that are involved with increasing accessibility of this data. There can even be a financial liability at stake here. And so the data democratized at its core is about championing better data governance practices to ensure that the data privacy and security, quality, data ownership, considerations around compliance with regulatory bodies, all of those are considered. And how do we do that? We have to convert these challenges into opportunities. Now, in the beginning, I spoke about the competitive advantage that is to be secured across every industry vertical for business growth, because guess what? Every industry segment has the common problem of having loads of unstructured data. So this volume of data that we are talking about, it's a problem of having this large volume of data, which is like crude oil waiting to be refined and converted into something valuable. When we look at crude oil in itself, until it is converted into gas, into chemicals, or even plastics, it's not really very useful. And so the same idea applies to data as well. The newest industry trend in business applications is about hyperautomation, total experience strategy, Internet of Behaviors, AI ops, all of which have data at its core. And so machine learning models have proven to be extremely effective in cases where identifying all sorts of risks, fraud prevention, and so much more can be done proactively and ensure that businesses are safe, our customers are safe, our partners are safe. I mentioned early on, data democratization is about making data available to all people so that any bottlenecks at the gateway of data can be avoided. This data needs to be accessible to the average non-technical user who is closer to the business, understands the business challenges, and needs to be able to draw insights in a very rapid manner so that they can convert those insights into action which is customer oriented. At the same time, there is fair amount of decision making that needs to happen at every level in an organization, and particularly as the execs are shaping up the strategy, it is very important to be able to give them a view of the data so that they can continue to use that for guided decision making. Now, this is where we bring in the idea of crowdsourcing. This idea of crowdsourcing is for citizen developers in the context here. And for those of you who may not know what crowdsourcing is all about, it is a type of talent sourcing model in which an organization can get services, ideas, voting, all of those things completed with the help of a large, relatively open, and often very rapidly evolving group of participants who are very passionate about the topic. In more than one ways, open source is also the idea of crowdsourcing, where a bunch of enthusiasts and developers work together collaboratively on a project to make it real. Now, when used ethically, crowdsourcing allows companies to select the best results not from a single provider but from a sea of talent. These results are delivered much faster since it is a form of freelancing. And but, above all, the most important idea around crowdsourcing is it improves creativity. It encourages that community building, right, which also happens in open source that I spoke about. And at the end of the day, all of this is about driving innovation and improving productivity. So when I say the power of crowdsourcing for data democratization, I'm talking about citizen developers. What is that? Well, a citizen developer is typically a business user who creates new applications using development and runtime environments sanctioned by corporate IT. For the purposes of this talk, I'll refer to citizen developers same as the no-code, low-code enthusiast, and this concept is also called self-service analytics across the industry. I hope you're with me so far. We're going at a fast pace, a lot of good material to cover here. I've covered many topics so far. One is around data democratization. Then I spoke about the idea of crowdsourcing and harnessing the power of citizen developers, and also no-code, low-code concept, as well as self-service analytics on the previous slide. Now, if we look at the low-code, no-code movement that is taking the industry by the storm, Gartner calls it a high productivity application platform. And so the Forrester goes in and one step further, and they say the world is divided into low-code, no-code development and mobile low-code development, right? So an evolution on the broad idea of no-code, low-code. And in the Magic Quadrant, I hope it comes across. There are many players in this space, with Microsoft being an established leader with the tool set to enable this. Obviously, I work there. I'm very passionate about our own tool set. Now, as this trend is growing, about 60% of current low-code, no-code users expect their weekly usage of the platform to grow. And there are plenty of providers with tools to enable just that. There is also a fair amount of investment activity happening everywhere across the industry to make this possible, because this trend is very important to today's digital age. And put things in perspective, there are more than 150 deals worth more than 2 billion that will close in this space in the year alone. So overall, we're saying that the market outlook is extremely promising. In the next 3 years, low-code application development will power more than 65% of the applications, And overall, today, about half the tech companies have some form of citizen development happening. This market is intended to explode and provide more than 200 billion in revenue, I would say, in the next 7 to 8 years alone, right? So lots of opportunity. What we're talking about is very, very relevant to all of you who are working with data in some shape or form. So now if we double click on what low code, no code is and how one concept is different from the other, first thing to remember is each of those serves a very distinct set of personas, use cases, and correspondingly, the individuals who are involved in either the low code or the no code movement have very different levels of software coding experience. So, for one, on the right side in the low code corner are citizen developers, true business users and enthusiasts who build functionality, but this is generally very limited to applications without having to go in and write a single line of code. And there are plenty of tools that enable that. On the low code corner on the left, in contrast, there are professional developers who are accelerating the delivery of the code that they write. And to do that, they want to streamline and simplify the work, right? In delivering this enterprise class applications, to be able to deliver that faster instead of having to regenerate the code or rewrite it from scratch every single time, they're looking at tools that help with little to no hand coding at times. So that's the basic idea around the personas. And yes, slightly confusing, but focusing on personas rather than coding alone provides a useful frame of reference. Now, there's also very little room for conflict between engineering and citizen developers overall, because no one should have to choose between low code and no code. I personally believe that in this era of innovation, things will happen because citizen developers have come in. But after that first phase of POC, IT should be able to take that, harden the solution, build on that, and add more functionality and ensure that the code is performant, scalable, and secure in the cloud, right, amongst other things. So citizen developers and IT can indeed coexist very peacefully, because again, when we look at this slide, very distinct personas, different use cases, there is some overlap, but at the end of the day, there is a place for citizen developers and the IT personnel to coexist and work well together. How are we doing on time? So let's keep going through the remaining slides. Now, I have covered the advantages of low code, no code in some previous slides, but overall, to repeat, we are looking at faster application development time, solutions that are customer oriented, self serviceable, and a big return in engineering investment, as well as reduction in engineering costs. Now, if your company is considering citizen developers, be sure to consider the questions. We shared the market outlook already, right? So, some of the questions that you need to consider as you think about citizen development at your end is, what business lines will benefit the most with this idea? Who is a typical business user who can step up and act as a citizen developer? What would be their training needs? What is the shadow IT and legacy consideration here for integration and maintenance? And at the end of the day, how will you recruit and train citizen developers? Your environment will also need to be conducive to citizen developers at the end of the day. So be sure to keep concepts around data quality, governance needs, all of those in mind as you go about promoting literacy and fostering the idea of citizen developers. This is a very high level strategy of the steps that one needs to take to have data democratization through this low code, no code concept, make it real for a large enterprise. There are three main swim lanes that I have listed here, and I'm not going to drain the slide in the interest of time, but one is around that enablement piece. It is very important as you go about to build awareness, to go out and get sponsorship and recruit internal employees who are behind this initiative every step of the way and helping co-contribute to that applications and that are coming up in the space. The next is around partnerships that will need to be fostered across organizational boundaries. Citizen development is very much about building a very rich ecosystem with a robust governance and guardrails in place so that there is enough technical oversight to ensure the things that we have been talking about, reliability, and security. And the third is consider your intangible assets as you go, right? What are the success criteria? And keep a quarterly check is what I would suggest. As you build telemetry, see, can you keep an eye on the usage of the citizen developed tools? Are these being even successful? Are they being adopted? What about quality gates and any DevOps practices that you keep in mind to be able to make this successful and true enterprise grade? I know we covered a lot. I'm just listing these slides out so that you can maybe offline follow up on some of those. We covered some of the benefits already, but there is some other things for you to consider here. And so before I take questions, all I want to say is in the brief time, I know this may be a new concept to many of you. If you weren't aware of the idea of data democratization and citizen development, I hope you've walked away informed. If you were aware of it, I hope you learned something new. In any case, I'll leave you with a call to action. And that is think about what does this democratized data mean at your end? Are there any considerations around shadow IT? Think about how data democratization can help alleviate any shadow IT concerns. And at the end of the day, what is it that you can do to promote data literacy and enable citizen developers? So those three considerations, right? What does the democratized data look like? How can it help alleviate any shadow IT concerns? And what can your organization do to promote this while fostering that good partnership between citizen developers and IT? So I'm not sure if we have time for questions, but I will stay on the call just in case. I don't see any questions in the chat. So, with that, thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to jump off now. Stephen, I know you're moderating this. Is that okay? Thank you. And if I'm still live, I'm recruiting for multiple roles for engineering program managers, business program managers, site reliability engineers, and data engineers. Please find me on LinkedIn, and I would love to connect with you if you're ever looking for a change in role. Bye bye now.